Hello, brethren. Welcome back to another YouTube video. Today we will be talking about the lore of Sorry. If you're confused by what I mean by that, I will explain. Sorry is a YouTube channel made by YouTubers TommyInnit, Wilbur Soot, Philza, Ranboo, and Slimecicle, people you'd probably recognize from the Dream SMP. Basically, it's just them role playing through different scenarios that can be considered immoral. From going to court, to breaking out of jail, to robbing a bank, to starting a cult. Oh, yeah, and a whole bunch of death. These videos are obviously meant to be just these 5 friends hanging out and acting like idiots with no real meaning behind it. Unfortunately, I tend to take things that are meant to be taken as a joke seriously. But you didn't click on this video to hear about my life, so let's dive into Sorry. As of recording this, there are currently 4 episodes of Sorry, unless you include that 10-second Among Us movie that had nothing to do with Among Us. So let's recap everything before we start theorizing. In episode 1, the character TommyInnit was playing is taken to court for eating Phil's character's sandwich. This may sound stupid, but the judge ended up being a criminal playing a judge, that being Charlie Slimecicle. So this checks out. Tommy's lawyer ends up being a drunk Wilbur, and Phil's lawyer ends up being Ranboo, or Ranboo, however you prefer to pronounce it. A bunch of shenanigans later, and Tommy, Wilbur, and Charlie are sent to jail for various reasons. Philza is sentenced to death, and Ranboo gets cured of worms, whatever the heck that is. Oh yeah, and Handy, which was a small joke character played by Wilbur, lives a happy life in Las Vegas. One thing we can take away from this is that the series apparently is happening in the future, as it says Handy had been living a nice life in Las Vegas since July of 2024, and that Philza would be killed on April 2nd, 2026. Keywords being would be, meaning it has not happened yet. Meaning this series has a 1 year and 9-month span in which it can take place in. Then in the next episode, we follow Tommy, Charlie, and Wilbur after they were thrown into prison. The guards are played by Phil and Ranboo, though it is very clear that they are not the same characters from the previous episode. Phil was sentenced to death, meaning there's no way he could work for the law in this episode. If he's committed a crime so bad that it's worth of the death penalty, why would they allow him to work for law enforcement? And Ranboo was a lawyer in the last episode, meaning it is unlikely for him to also be a cop in this one. For these reasons, I'm going to call the characters who are from episode 1 the originals, and the characters that are not their second versions. Most of this episode is just shenanigans once again, but there are a few things worth pointing out. First, Wilbur is somehow able to escape by warming up Philza2's heart. That doesn't make much sense, but then again, these guys are idiots. Charlie is able to escape by taking Ranboo2's place as officer. Wilbur goes undercover to get Tommy out of jail. Tommy ends up killing Wilbur with a gun and then escapes the prison, saying that he is going to rob a bank. We also know Tom's last name in this weird universe, as the end of the episode says his full name is Thomas Dufresne, but I'm unsure if I should take that part seriously. But then again, I took this video seriously. Speaking of robbing banks, that is exactly what happens in the next episode. Since Tommy said he was going to rob a bank in the previous episode, it's safe to say that the Tommy in this episode is probably the same Tommy, meaning we are still dealing with the original Tommy. The same cannot be said for the rest of the gang, though. We are now on Wilbur 2, Phil's a 3, Ranboo 3, and a new character played by Charlie known as the Beast. Though he is sometimes referred to as Charlie, I'm going to check this up to error made by the actors. The gang invades a bank in London multiple times, but on the last attempt, they are actually able to make it to the vault. Unfortunately, they are unable to find a code to the actual money, but only find a code to the game Flappy Bird. Then Beast decides to be wholesome, which Wilbur 2 did not like, so he ends up killing Beast. In episode 4, there is a cult that worships the Dark Lord, consisting of Wilbur, Tommy, and Ranboo as the leader. I think this is a completely new cast of characters, as Wilbur 2 knew how a gun worked, but the Wilbur in this episode seemingly didn't, making this Wilbur 3. The original Tommy doesn't have any lore reason to join the cult, and this one is also pretty stupid, even for Tommy and its standards. So I don't think this is the same Tommy, making this Tommy 2. As for Ranboo, it's pretty hard to tell, so I'm just gonna call this one Ranboo ? In this episode, Charlie joins this cult, but is secretly an undercover cop trying to take down this cult. And Phil's character, who I'll call Phil 4 since no one recognizes him, is getting pictures of everyone, of everything this cult does. Eventually, Tommy catches on that Charlie is a fraud, which leads to him being killed by Wilbur 3's hatchet. Sorry. And then he is resurrected from the dead as some sort of zombie. Charlie then reveals himself to be an undercover cop, and is then killed by Wilbur 3's hatchet. Then Wilbur 3 decides to be an idiot and shoot himself in the face with Charlie's gun. Charlie is then resurrected like Tommy 2 was, and instead of resurrecting Wilbur 3, they put him in a boat and send him off into the river that Tommy 2 apparently lives in. Now let's get our magnifying glasses and see what the heck is happening here. The first 2 episodes are pretty self-explanatory, but the second 2 are a bit harder to fit into this timeline, especially episode 4. The first thing I want to talk about is episode 3, and how the gang got away before the cops showed up every single time. Your first thought, maybe that they were just really good at escaping. However, in the second to last attempt, a bomb inside of Beast explodes, which kills himself, Tom, and everyone else in the lobby, and yet they come back the very next attempt. And then maybe every attempt, maybe you're thinking that every attempt, except for the last attempt, never actually happens, and the previous attempts were just the gang coming up with a plan to rob the bank. If that is true, then how would the same people be in these failed plans every single time, and on the actual attempt? Not to mention, right before the last attempt, Phil 3 said they had to apply everything they had learned, which doesn't seem like something Phil 3 would say if all the previous attempts were just plans that never got executed. So how can all of the attempts happen, and yet Beast and Tom live to see the final attempt? The best answer I could come up with is one of the 5 gang members has the ability to manipulate time. Stick with me here. It would explain how the same people were always at the bank, explains why they never got caught, it explains how Beast and Tommy were able to come back from the dead. I was originally going to say that that this was probably the same power that we see the cult people using, like reviving the dead, but it's very clear that even though that they were brought back to life, it's not the same sort of magic, because when the cult members brought people back to life, they were complete idiots, more of idiots than they already were. But they seemed like completely different characters from the ones that they than the ones they were before they had died. I think I even know which of the five members have these powers. Wilbur, too. After all, he was the one to kill off Beast on the last attempt. If anyone else had these powers, they would have reversed the time and brought Beast back. This begs the question, though, how did Wilbur 2 get these time manipulating powers? How about from a cult that worships the Dark Lord? After all, we see that these cult members do have some power over life and death after turning Tommy 2 and Charlie into zombies. Maybe the Dark Lord had given Wilbur 2 these time manipulating abilities. After all, the time travel and revival powers can both bring people back from the dead. I'm not saying Wilbur 2 and Wilbur 3 are the same person. Remember that Wilbur 2 knew how a gun worked, and yet Wilbur 3 didn't. Or maybe I'm wrong, and Wilbur 2's powers are something completely unrelated to the cult. However, the cult can even bring us back to the original Charlie. Remember at the end of episode 2, Charlie became a part of the police department, and the Charlie in episode 4 was also a part of the police department. Who's to say these aren't the same Charlie? One last thing I'd like to mention is that the Charlie in episode 4 is a part of the New York Police Department, meaning episodes 1, 2, and 4 take place in New York. And remember, in episode 3, a bank in London was being robbed. This means that after the original Tommy escaped prison, he got out of the country he was wanted in, makes sense, and went to London so he could continue to commit crimes. And that, my friends, were my thoughts on Sorry. I know we have that that trailer of the entirety of Chapter 1 of Sorry that basically reveals what all the episodes are gonna be, but I'm not gonna try to guess what those episodes are just based on 1 second clips. Um, well, what did you guys think? I hope you liked it, and I hope that you end up subscribing. And I will see you all in another time. Bye.